it. So this is what I mean when I say that Tim Pool is either just doesn't know where to find this information, he's too dumb to figure it out, or he's just completely lying to you. Okay, let's go through some of these highlights of the Tim Pool Destiny debate. I finally got around to watching it, and I want to go through some of the key points. I timestamped some of it. Let's get into it.
I'm just talking very specifically because it's very important to understand each of these policies. So the PPP only works for you if you pay out employees. So I got a PPP loan. The way that works, the way that the paperwork details is that when I get that money, I can claim up to 2.5 times the expenses of all of my employees. And the only money that's forgiven for me is what I pay out to my employees. So for me personally, there were like 2 people that I kept on payroll just because, the government's going to pay for it. Yeah, screw it. I'll take the PPP money and then I'll continue to pay them out because it'll be forgiven. I only kept those 2 people on payroll because the government gave me that PPP money. And any corporation isn't going to pocket the money. It gets paid out to employees. It has to be.
Did they give you money to pay your rent, pay your taxes, pay your costs, replace perishable goods?
No, it's just to cover the cost of employing the employees.
So
not to cover everything, yeah.
What happens to the lockdown?
Maybe they didn't for Destiny because, he doesn't really have like a brick and mortar business. That's not what he is or does. But the PPP money was, the sole purpose was to keep people on the payroll of their employer so that they wouldn't go on unemployment, because it's much harder to get them back into the workforce if they fall in unemployment. So the goal of the government was to let's not them fall in unemployment. Let's give money to their employer that will be completely forgiven if they keep their employees on the payroll. But you could also get other costs completely forgiven, like utilities, rent, the cost of, if you're a restaurant, like the cost of your food that you sell. All of that would be also completely forgiven if it was used properly from the PPP. Now, we can say that there wasn't enough money given out to smaller businesses and in businesses in general. I would definitely agree there. But what Tim Pool is trying to come across by saying like, they didn't give money to businesses to cover other costs. Yeah, they did. The PPP was forgivable with a myriad of different costs. We can argue whether or not they got enough money. Sure.
How do you feel about Fauci saying early on that he was doing the best possible, that no one could do better?
Every time somebody contradicts Trump, they get immediately fired. Look at the, I think it was the cybersecurity head of the DHS that came out and said, well, this election was actually pretty secure, and Trump instantly fired him. So it's not surprising to me that Fauci, a man that's been working in government for, 30 or 40 years or something, that he came out and was like, oh yeah, I think Trump is doing it.
He's been defying him for months.
He has been defying it, but there's a very careful line you have to skirt. If you've ever worked a corporate job and you've got an idiot manager, you don't go out and say like, why are you doing this? It's stupid. It's more like, maybe
I kind of do.
I think you're doing a great...
I get fired.
Sure, yeah. Well, if you don't want to get fired, it's more like, you're doing an amazing job. I think we could do a little bit better here, right? So, of course,
you think Fauci lied to the American people to save his own job?
Oof. I think that Fauci was saying things in the most diplomatic manner possible because he wanted to serve the American people. And I got immediately fired by Trump, which he would.
Saying Trump did the best possible job and no one could do better is a big difference from we're trying as hard as we can.
I don't know if he said no one could do better. I would be curious of the exact quote.
Oh, Tim Pool. This is where I say he's either just flat. The charitable interpretation would be he's just one of the most unscrupulous people on the internet. Just one of the most, if you would want to call him a journalist, sure. I'm not sure I'd go that far and call him that. But the most charitable interpretation here is he's just completely unscrupulous. But I think more in line with the real interpretation of this is he's just flat out lying. Let's get the real quote. This is it's in context. It shows you that Fauci was not referring to Donald Trump. So this is what Tim Pool is referring to. He's probably referring to the ad. There was a 15-second ad that Trump ran as he was running his campaign, and in the ad it showed Fauci saying, quote, "I can't imagine that anybody could be doing more." And they mashed that up with another quote from Fauci, but that's not the full context of what Fauci was saying. This is the full quote, and it doesn't have to do with Trump. "I'm down at the White House virtually every day with the task force. I'm connected by phone throughout the day and into the night. When I say at night, I'm talking 12, 1, 2 in the morning. I'm not the only one. There's a whole group of us that are doing that. It's every single day. So I can't imagine that under any circumstances that anyone could be doing more. He wasn't talking about Donald Trump. He was talking about the task force team. But again, if you get your news from Tim Pool, you're going to be completely deluded as to what is really going on.
And I'm not gonna mince words. Trump did not present his case.
Well, they
they
talk through the same it was.
Oh, now he's not going to mince words. All this man does is mince words, okay? But now he's not going to do it.
A 46-minute on Facebook. I think I watched the same video. Usually there's talk through the same 7 affidavits every single time.
There's way more affidavits. There's way more
Affidavits. Let's get into the affidavits here. Affidavits really mean nothing. It has to do with what's in the affidavits, what's being alleged. And one can only assume, because they're losing court case after court case in numerous different courts all around the country in a plethora of different states, that they're being presented with these affidavits and they're complete nonsense what's on them. And you want to go to they're sworn affidavits, it's perjury. Yeah, well, perjury is notoriously hard to prove. So I'm sure that when they're writing these affidavits, they're told and they're made aware that, listen, you're probably not going to get brought up on any kind of perjury charge on this affidavits, because it has to be shown that it's a material. You all also have to prove that they lied willingly, so they weren't coerced into it, and when they made those statements, they knew them to be false. Very difficult to do. These people probably are just ignorant to the legality of the process of observing and ballot counting and the signatures. They don't know the laws ins and out. So they're probably ignorant to a lot of the processes, and what they're alleging on the affidavits is not a lie. They just don't know. There's a reason they have hundreds of affidavits, and they just keep losing case after case.
Right.
Okay,
they didn't last time. Why would they know?
For a big Tim Pool prediction, not taking into context. Do you think they're going to win any of these lawsuits in a meaningful way? Not like there were 4 ballots and a mail-in thing, or whatever. Do you think that they're actually going to win?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
First of all, when a judge says, "Did you have observers in the building?" and the Republican says, "The amount of observers in the building was a non-zero number, but we were not given meaningful access to the votes," and the judge says, "Well, according to the election code, it doesn't specify the distance by which you can observe, therefore you have no grounds to sue," that is clearly bad faith. If Trump is going to lose, it's going.
So again, we have Tim Pool here. I have to just think he's completely lying, because that's not what was said in the courtroom. It was Judge Paul Diamond, and he didn't say in the building, because that's what Pool's main argument is. Like, the crux of his argument is like, oh my God, they're somewhere in the building, so it's fine. That's not what was said. Paul Diamond said, quote, "Are your observers in the counting room?" Trump's campaign responded with, "There's a non-zero number of people in the room," which is one of the most sleaziest lawyer answers I've ever heard. And then Judge Diamond responded with, quote, "I'm asking you as a member of the bar of this court, are people representing the Donald J. Trump for president representing the plaintiffs in that room?" And you can definitely tell from that quote, Paul Diamond's a little pissed with the non-zero number remark. And then the Trump campaign lawyer says, yes. Paul Diamond says, "I'm sorry then, what's your problem?" Room, not building. Are your observers in the counting room? And they are. And these Philadelphia, the Allegheny, the Pennsylvania suit they're talking about, these people were on camera. It was live streamed, them counting the votes. It's on camera. And there's observers in the same room. So Tim Pool's just completely lying to you here.
Could potentially be.
Yeah.
And if somebody were to bring it up in that manner, I'd believe them when they said that. But right now, it just feels like Republicans are doing anything they can to try to flip the election results.
I think, yes, 100%. And I think the Democrats, I don't think they tried to flip the results in 2016 for the most part. There was a whole lot of the Hillary can still win stuff. And
Hillary conceded the next day.
But
it's absolutely not even remotely similar.
It's remotely similar. I would say it's
maybe
not,
like
it's not
the way
same
that
thing.
This is again just Tim Pool being completely just foolish, disingenuous. It's not remotely similar. The next day, that night, Hillary Clinton called Donald Trump and congratulated him. The following day, in front of a podium, she conceded the election. And then the day after that, President Obama invited then President-elect Donald Trump to the White House. It's nowhere near the same. I don't think I have to run through the timeline of events that's currently going on to show you how it's completely the exact opposite of what went on with Hillary, Trump, and Obama in 2016. To think otherwise, I'm sorry, but you're just flat out wrong. You're just wrong, just 100%.
Where members of like the Trump supporting Republican Georgians are like, aha, now is our chance. But people really believe it.
Yeah, they do.
I think, for one,
partially because a lot of people play into it. You do as well, right?
How do I play into it?
When you're tweeting
I just
stuff,
straight up agree.
He has the nerve to say, how do I play into it? We just went over just a few instances of how he plays into it, and then we'll get a little deeper into it coming up here on how he plays into it. Every video this guy releases is how playing into it. What are you talking about? Like that's him right there. Not being able to admit it is him playing into it, because everybody knows, anyone who's got two brain cells to rub together knows that all you do is play into it. And that answer, denying it, is just completely and utterly nonsense. It's just nonsense.
And said it was nuts.
Sure, I know, but it feels like a lot of your rhetoric gives a lot of credence or credibility to a lot of the lawsuits that challenge, like how the election is being, like the fact that you're willing to say that you think that do you think that the election, the majority of the election was legit? That
yes.
Maybe there were a few, but you think for the results stand.
I think what people need to realize too is you don't need widespread fraud to alter the outcome of an election.
You would.
No, you don't. You need maybe one person in 4 key districts.
Absolutely not.
Or one person with a USB stick.
Absolutely not. That's not how these work.
That is, again, him playing into it. I don't play into it. And he has Destiny asked him, do you think that there was widespread fraud that was going to, overturn? And then he says, well, you don't need widespread fraud. Bro, that's you playing into it. You do need widespread fraud. You can't just pop a USB stick into a voting machine in 4 separate counties, so then you would need 4 different people to do this, and it's so dumb. Just use some critical thinking skills and think about how just foolish that sounds. So he says you only need one person in 4 different counties, so you need 4 people in only 4 counties around the country. In this election, that wouldn't have worked. And you need them all to be criminals, be uploading something on a USB drive that's going to corrupt the voting machine in such a way that's going to flip votes, and they're going to have to do this in such a way that they can't get caught, and no one's going to notice that the voting machine is messed up and not working properly. And when it's so dumb, and this is him playing into it. You do need a widespread plan laid out just well enough that you can flip enough counties in multiple different states and get away with it. You need widespread voter fraud we're talking potentially hundreds of thousands of votes in multiple different states.
In the Kraken lawsuit was declare Trump the winner.
Yeah, like
and
they're
like,
literally asking explicitly, like this is supposed to be the part
out.
They're not supposed to say out loud. You're supposed to keep that quiet. You're trying to, but like, so I'm not saying that like I hope the investigations are blocked if they have merit, but I mean I would understand why some people would feel a bit salty that investigations get dragged out forever. But
I know a lot of people who are salty about the Russiagate elections, and I think that as with compromise comes one side rolling their eyes while the other side shakes their fist. And
Flynn was communicating with people in an unauthorized manner before he went to the White House. He literally lied about it.
Lying? I thought you said it was unauthorized. Did he lie about communicating, or was it unauthorized communication?
I believe that he lied about it to the FBI, his communication. That
do you know the story? I think you're walking into a landmine.
Walking into a landmine? Which part of...
Well, allow me to diffuse this landmine here that he says Destiny's about to walk into, because I've done quite a lot of reading on the Micheal Flynn case, and the pardoning of Michael Flynn, the whole thing. And what Tim Pool's about to tell you about the Michael Flynn case is just flat out wrong. He's either too dumb to understand what he reads about it, or he's just lying to you.
Or being charged with lying to the FBI, do you think it was illegitimate?
Yes.
Why?
Because he was the acting national security advisor who was communicating with his Russian counterpart.
Then why did he lie to the FBI about it?
Do you know the meeting wasn't a formal investigation? He was hanging out at the White House and they asked him an informal question in passing, and that was the grounds. Did you know that they threatened his son to force a guilty plea?
Why did they lie?
Did you know that?
Okay, so that's not true. None of that is true. There was an investigation into Michael Flynn already from the FBI. Okay, Flynn is a retired military intelligence officer, so he's required to get permission from the State Department and the Defense Department if he does work for foreign governments. He never did that when he was doing work for Turkey, and he got paid by RT, a Russian-owned media outlet, $45,000. He never disclosed any of that. Okay? And then he wrote an article in The Hill basically backing Turkey all of a sudden, because when years before he was against Erdogan, and he was saying that since Erdogan came into power, they've kind of moved away from a secular nation and moved more towards like an Islamist nation. Then years later, he's on the payroll of Turkey as consulting. So he writes an article in The Hill where he now states that the U.S. needs to fully support Erdogan in Turkey. And this was after he was doing consulting work with his company, Flynn Intel Group. When he was retired from the military, he was doing consulting work for Turkey. He then writes this article in The Hill saying that the U.S. needs to support Erdogan and Turkey, and it's a complete different stance from what he was taking previously about how Erdogan has moved Turkey away from secularism and more towards Islamism. So he never disclosed this information of receiving payment from Turkey. He also never disclosed that the company with close ties to the Turkish government, actually reviewed the draft of this article in The Hill before he went and gave it to The Hill to be published. And then he, like I said before, he also took $45,000 from RT. These payments to him happened when he was no longer in the military. And being that he was ex-Intel officer, like I said before, he needs to disclose these payments from foreign governments, especially foreign adversarial governments, that he's receiving payment. He never did that. This is one of the reasons why there was already an investigation into him because of what was going on. And this is before he was hired as National Security Advisor on Donald Trump's team. And then when you put it together, when you know that the FBI and the CIA know that Russia was interfering in our elections and they wanted Trump to win, that was their guy, and then you know what they know about Michael Flynn's past, and then you see Donald Trump hire Michael Flynn, you might want to be like, well, hold up. Let's not close this investigation. And that's what they did. They didn't close the investigation. They were going to, but they didn't, because, well, if you start connecting those dots, you might be like, well, maybe there's something here. So now you start connecting these dots, and then you have Michael Flynn, who's accepting money from Turkey and doing basically supporting Erdogan's and Erdogan's bidding for him in these op-eds and around the world. And the FBI then believes that he may have violated the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, which is another reason that they continued this investigation, which is a law requiring that individuals who are representing the political interests of foreign powers disclose their relationship with the foreign government. He didn't do that. And again, it all comes back down to that he was a former intel officer in our military. So another reason to keep the investigation open.
Why did he lie to the FBI?
if you right now lied to me, or what if you lied to Ian, and you didn't know he was
I'd be
FBI?
so mad.
You think
This so this is another one. I took the time, and he keeps saying that he didn't know he was FBI, and he was like trapped, or it was like a trap they set for him, or they coerced him into it. These are the actual documents filed in the United States versus Micheal Flynn, and here's what is stated on him. Oh man, this is from on or about January 24th, 2017. Flynn agreed to be interviewed by the agents from the FBI. January 24th is a voluntary interview. He wasn't like coerced or like didn't know that this individual that he was speaking to was an FBI agent. He knew, and he volunteered to the discussion, to the interview. They reached out to him, and then a day later he had a whole day and he volunteered to it. So this is what I mean when I say that Tim Pool is either just doesn't know where to find this information, he's too dumb to figure it out, or he's just completely lying to you.
think that Flynn was talking to somebody? He had no idea
not
he
saying
was
that.
FBI.
He didn't know he was under investigation. There was no legitimate investigation, and he was asked a passive question by someone who had nothing to do with him.
There was no legitimate. Didn't the FBI?
That is, again, just completely false. I just went over to you why he was being investigated, and he should have known. He knew what this interview was about. Potentially violating FAR, not disclosing payments from Turkey and Russia when you were a former intel officer in the American military, switching your stance with Erdogan and writing op-eds in the Hill, but then making sure that the draft and everything is kosher in the op-ed with Turkey and their government before you actually publish it in the Hill. These are all reasons why they were investigating him. And then again, when you connect the dots between knowing that Russia was interfering in our election and that they wanted Trump to win, and then you see Donald Trump actually hire Micheal Flynn, if you're FBI agents, you might be like, well, wait, let's keep this investigation open. This doesn't look cool. This isn't very kosher.
And the DOJ both have, or I'm sorry, not the DOJ, the State Department both have a huge interest in Flynn because of his association with Kislyak. I thought that was like a big part that both of them had an issue with. That the State Department didn't want him in the White House because they weren't sure if he was compromised. The State Department, and that the FBI didn't mind if he was there because the FBI wanted to follow him up for a further investigation.
So you're talking politics, not legitimate claims against Micheal Flynn.
Okay.
You're talking about Micheal Flynn, who came out, and this was a conversation we had the other day with Luke Rutkowski. Micheal Flynn came out and basically talked about what the Obama administration had been doing with supplying weapons to rebels. Obama got mad, fires him, tells Trump not to hire this guy. So Trump says, I'm going to hire him. Then they started they had these meetings. This was released in...
That is, again, not true. We just went over why it's not true and why he was actually being investigated. And then what makes this whole situation even worse is that he then lies to Mike Pence and presumably Donald Trump. So now the Russians and Turkey, but in particular the Russians with Kislyak, because the sanctions were put on the Russians from Obama, now they have leverage on the National Security Advisor because they know what's going on, and they know that he just lied to the FBI and the vice president. So now they have leverage on the National Security Advisor, which is a huge problem, national security-wise. He's under investigation from the FBI for not disclosing this information. They know he's now being potentially picked as National Security Advisor. Donald Obama is wondering why Russia isn't responding to the recent sanctions he put on them. And then they find out that it's because the National Security Advisor currently, and Micheal Flynn, who has ties money-wise to Russia and other foreign adversaries that he didn't disclose, potentially broke FARA and was against Erdogan, and then all of a sudden got paid by Erdogan and was doing his bidding in American outlets. Now he is talking to Kislyak. And could it be that he is telling Kislyak, don't worry about the sanctions, because when we come into the White House, they just won the election, we can do away with whatever sanctions and we can ease the sanctions, whatever it may be. So that could be why Obama's wondering why they didn't respond to the sanctions, and that would be why. It's also why that, like I said, the FBI kept the investigation open that was going into him anyway. They were investigating him before he even spoke to Kislyak. They kept it open because of all these dots they connected, and he wasn't coerced or trapped into an interview with the FBI. He knew the interview was happening. He knew they were FBI agents. He lied to the FBI. He lied to Mike Pence. He didn't disclose payments from foreign governments, and particularly foreign adversaries, prior. Of course, what Tim Pool presents to you is nothing to what actually happened in the whole Micheal Flynn scenario. Nothing. And, Destiny probably didn't know a lot of what's going on here. He maybe didn't do a lot of reading into this case. Maybe he did, and he just forgot some key aspects, which is what happens, which is part of the problem of having these live talks and debates and interviews. Probably part of the reason why Tim Pool wants to do it in his studio under his terms, so he can pick the questions and direct the conversation, and he can't be fact checked, on the spot. So that's why you have to go back through these and fact check them, because he's just completely fucking lying to you, and it's pretty unfortunate. So don't be fooled by this man. He, again, like I said, is the most unscrupulous journalist I've ever seen, or is just a complete disingenuous, lying, doing it for money hack. There's really no other way to put it. I thought overall Destiny did pretty well. Again, you're not going to be able to catch every single instance, but I thought overall he did pretty well. It's tough to keep up with all the nonsense and lies and half-truths and omissions that go on in conversations like this with someone like Tim Pool.